greatest fortune. Actually, we don't know how many lifetimes we were waiting to have this opportunity to be together, to sing about Krishna, to remember Krishna, to discuss Krishna's teachings. It's a very unique opportunity. Sometimes we come every week and we don't maybe fully appreciate that this is so valuable. Narottam Das Thakur, he says, Tadira Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanevas Janame Janame Hoy Ei Abhilas. That life after life, I don't have any other desire save and apart from the desire to always be with the Vaishnavas, with the spiritual people, and to remember the goal of life. So, thanks everyone for being here. We'll sing a little bit, discuss a little bit, and then maybe have a question and answer for a little bit. And we'll see how far we go. Hare Krishna. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Rama, Rama Rama, Jai Gaura Hari Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishnaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nidhi Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Puchari, Nirvishesha Srimati, Astagya Sukari, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Shri Bhaktivinoda, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Gita. Am I supposed to get Gita? Gita? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hi Krishna everyone. So I guess we have some time to read a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is coming, and the Bhagavad Gita comes to us by Krishna's mercy Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says the Ganga comes down in previous yugas. First it washes the feet of the Lord, and then it comes through the coverings of the universe. And then what happens is it arrives in this world as Mother Ganga, and whoever bathes in the Ganga then flows towards the lotus feet of Krishna. Very beautiful. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says the same Ganga came back in the following yuga, but this time the Ganga flowed from the mouth of the Lord, and it came in the form of the Gita Chakrid, the nectar of the Bhagavad Gita. And therefore one who hears the words of the Bhagavad Gita, they flow with that Ganga and come face to face with the Supreme Lord. But then he says that same Ganga came in Kali Yuga, and this time the Ganga came in the form of the teardrops falling from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's eyes when he sang in the Kirtan. And therefore one who drowns themselves in Harinam Sankirtan, they enter into the tears of that same Ganga and enter into the heart of the Supreme Lord. So the Bhagavad Gita is very, very beautiful, very, very powerful. Shankaracharya says all the Vedic scriptures are like a forest. And in that forest, there are many, many flowers in the form of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are considered the flowers of the forest of the Vedas because it is in the Upanishads that we begin to find the first knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the ultimate goal of life. But then he says, if the Upanishads are the flowers of the forest of the Vedas, then the Bhagavad Gita is like a garland made from all of those flowers, Gita Upanishad, and therefore is considered the essence of everything. So we continue going back again and again to the Bhagavad Gita. But Krishna was speaking to Arjun, but it was easy for Arjun because Krishna was directly speaking to him. But Krishna is not directly speaking to us. So we were having a conversation about how the Gita is actually Krishna speaking directly to us. That is a very mystical art, that one is able to just be very open-hearted, with open ears and an open heart, and try to understand this is Krishna speaking to me. If one does that and one has that open-heartedness, they can see. Once there was a devotee, he was driving his car, so he was listening to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes when you're listening to the radio, if you just turn the car off with the radio on, the next time you turn the ignition on, the radio just begins. He was listening to a lecture of Prabhupada. Anyway, he stopped the car. He parked up, he went shopping, and a thief came. Anyway, the thief broke into his car, and he was trying to mess around, hotwire the car. Finally, somehow he managed to hotwire the car, the engine fired, and immediately the radio came on, and Srila Prabhupada was lecturing, and he said, everyone in the material world is a thief. And this guy was like, Prabhupada said, everyone in the material world is a thief because everyone is stealing from Krishna. Bhoktaram yagyata pasham sarvaloka maheshwaram. Anyway, he became a devotee. So we can read something and try to see that, yes, Krishna is speaking to us. I don't think you have a verse that you follow, no? Is it? Okay, let's read one verse. I'm going to read a verse for you today, which is a very, very important verse. This verse is so important that Krishna, the commentators say that Krishna himself says, after he speaks this verse, he says, I want all the devotees to go out there in the world and with symbols, I want you to declare this verse. That's how important it is. Krishna says, this verse, I want you to go out with symbols and declare this whole verse. to the world. Anyone know which verse I'm talking about? Once I said this and someone said, Sharira Vidya. Firstly, that's not in the Gita and that's not what Krishna means. Anyone know which verse I'm talking about? Kaunteya Pratijani. I knew someone was going to say that. Close, but not quite. Not quite. I knew you were going to say that. That's why I asked. Because I wanted to catch you out. No. Somewhere in the middle. Okay, that's very broad. Good try, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam. No, that's an important verse, but that's not the one. Once, just on that verse, someone once came and he said to me, why do you guys always give us numbers? He said, when I was at school, it was all about numbers. When I go to work, it's all about numbers and targets. You know, when I speak to my wife, it's all about numbers. And now I come to the temple, I want to relax. And you guys, you just give me numbers. 4 rounds, 4 legs. Four rounds, 16 legs. No. 4 legs, 16 rounds. Why? Where is the number? So he said, where's the number? Where does Krishna say 16 rounds? So he was saying, so he thought he caught the devotee out. Where does Krishna say 16 rounds? So the devotee came to that verse. He said, Krishna doesn't say 16 rounds. Krishna says, Satatam Kirtayanto Ma. Do it 24 hours a day. He goes, oh, I'll do 16 rounds. Good try. Not that one. No, you didn't get it. Okay, shall I tell you the verse? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually says in his commentary that Krishna says, I want you to go out with cymbals and declare this verse to the whole world. Sorry? No. No. I knew you wouldn't get it. That's why I'm asking you. I have to prove like I'm better than you. Which chapter? No. This is the verse. Okay, we could be here all night. I'll just tell you the verse. 9:30. It's a verse that you may not have thought. Apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak sadureva samantavya samyak vyavasito hisaha. This is an incredibly important verse. Translation. Even if one commits the most abominable action, even if one does something very bad, even if one makes a big mistake, if they are engaged in devotional service, they are to be considered saintly because they are properly situated in their determination. Because of time constraints, I won't read the whole purport. Please do. It's very amazing. Srila Prabhupada explains. This is an incredibly important verse. Krishna is saying, in your life, if you make a mistake, I'm still ready to forgive you. In your life, if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the story. In your life, if you make a mistake and you feel like you're falling short from the ideal, there is still hope. Krishna doesn't just see where you are, but Krishna is ready to see where you could be. Krishna doesn't just see how far you are from the ideal, but Krishna sees how far you have come from where you were. Krishna doesn't just see the bad that you've done, but Krishna also sees the sincerity and the good motivation within your heart. Krishna doesn't just focus on perfection, but Krishna is more interested in progress. And therefore, in this world, who is there that will not make a mistake? Is there anyone in the room who's never made a mistake? I don't think so. And if anyone puts their hand up, they're mistaken. Mistakes are a part of life. This verse is very important because if you neglect this verse, then Krishna consciousness becomes unattainable. But if you abuse this verse, then Krishna consciousness also becomes unattainable. So this verse cannot be ignored because every single person will make a mistake. And therefore, if we understand this verse, then it gives us the hope. It gives us the determination to carry on. But at the same time, if we abuse this verse, then we're also in trouble. Mistakes don't write you off from the path of devotional service. In fact, the Bhagavatam is, in one sense, an anthology of people who made mistakes. In the first canto, Parikshit makes a mistake. In that moment, he garlands the sage with a dead snake, something which should never be done. He made a mistake. In the second canto, Brahmaji makes a mistake. He becomes so overwhelmed that he even begins to chase his own daughter. In the third canto, by her own admission, Devahuti said she made a mistake because she could have asked Kardama Muni for anything, for spiritual knowledge, for so many eternal things, but instead she asked for other things. In the fourth canto, Dhruva Maharaj makes a mistake. In the fifth canto, Bharat Maharaj makes a mistake. In the sixth canto, Ajamil makes a mistake. The life means mistakes. But the Bhagavatam shows how everyone can recover from their mistakes. So here Krishna says, even if you do something which is su dura achar, achar means activities, dura achar means bad activities, su dura achar means extremely bad. Krishna says, sadhureva, I still consider you saintly if you're properly situated in your determination. So what Krishna is basically saying is that if someone makes an honest mistake, it's okay. So the $64 million question, as they would say in the States, is what constitutes an honest mistake? Isn't it? Because everyone will say, yeah, mine was an honest mistake. Krishna, come on, that was an honest mistake. What's the difference between an honest mistake and a dishonest mistake? Because according to Krishna, if you make an honest mistake, not only are you not written off, you're still considered saintly. So therefore, this requires some thought. Let me offer you a few ideas of what constitutes an honest mistake. The first obvious thing about an honest mistake is that one is honest about making the mistake. If one is sincere, if one is open, if one is transparent, if one comes forward and says, I did the wrong thing and I know I shouldn't have done it. In other words, if one is ready to admit, then that kind of mistake is said to be an honest mistake. Kali Yuga is resting on one principle and one principle only, and that is truthfulness. You can lose everything in your life, but the moment you lose your truthfulness, the honesty, the ability to be transparent, then everything is lost. And so, the first characteristic we can say of an honest mistake is that one is honest and open about it. The second thing about an honest mistake is that one thing cannot be considered an accidental mistake if it is recurring multiple times. An honest mistake is an anomaly. An honest mistake is something which happens infrequently. An honest mistake is just something which is very otherwise uncharacteristic of that person. And therefore, if someone seems to continue making the same mistake, then in one sense, Krishna will begin to look at that person and say, I don't know now. This seems to be of a different category. The third characteristic of an honest mistake is that in someone's life, even if they make a mistake, if you look at every other aspect of their life and the trajectory of their journey in spirituality, everything else is pretty much in place and moving forward. But this mistake is just like an anomaly, something which is not fitting with the rest of what that person stands for and what that person displays to the world. Whereas if someone says, I made a mistake, but in so many other parts of their life, there is also questionable behavior, then we begin to think it doesn't look so much like an honest mistake. Another characteristic of an honest mistake is that once someone has committed that mistake, they change themselves from it. In other words, if something happens to us and we fall short of the ideal, but we come out of that experience and we actually change ourselves, we actually reform our character, we actually make a positive adjustment to how we interact with others and interact with the world, then it can be said that we made an honest mistake because we have truly recognized it, and the evidence of that is that we've done something about it. Another characteristic of an honest mistake is that perhaps the ultimate thing, which is what Krishna says here, is that one is still very, very much determined and fixed and focused in their devotional practices. In other words, sometimes our weakness can become our biggest strength. Why? Because if your weakness and your mistake engenders a humility, and that humility causes you to then take more shelter of Krishna, more shelter of the spiritual process, recognizing one's own weakness, then actually your weakness has now become your biggest strength. And therefore here in the verse, Krishna says, Bhajate Mam Ananya Bhak. That if one is determinedly engaged and taking shelter of spiritual practice, knowing out of a sense of humility that for me there's no other opportunity unless Krishna gives me the grace and the strength, then that person can be said to have made an honest mistake. So here I'm just sharing with you some ideas. The Bhagavad Gita is very, very powerful because the Bhagavad Gita is speaking to the human condition. The Bhagavad Gita is speaking to every event, experience, emotion that we will go through in our life. And definitely one of those events, experiences, and emotions will be the experience and emotion and encounter of failure. There's an ideal of where we want to be, and there's the reality of where we are. And that gap is uncomfortable. And Krishna is seeing that gap. We're seeing the gap. But Krishna wants us to make up that gap. Krishna is very kind. Krishna is on our side. And Krishna knows that in this age, everyone is weak. However, Krishna is always there to provide a helping hand. And this is Krishna speaking in the Bhagavad Gita, saying that he's very, very kind and he's very, very forgiving. And when Krishna comes in the next incarnation as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he comes in a more overtly merciful form in which he overlooks so many weaknesses, and he empowers every single living entity with the strength to receive perfection. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is known as Karuna Avatar. So of all Krishna's qualities, perhaps the quality which is moving the devotee the most, at least while we're in the conditioned stage, is Krishna's kindness, Krishna's compassion, Krishna's understanding, his empathy, and his tolerance of our shortcomings. And so there's no need to ever feel disappointed. There's no need to ever feel depressed. There's no need to ever feel dejected, because Krishna is on our side and he wants us to succeed. And so these verses are very, very important. They're very, very hope-giving. You can live a certain number of days without food. You can live a certain number of days without water. You can live perhaps a few days without sleep, but you can't live one day without hope. And so the Bhagavad Gita is constantly giving us that hope that we can make it. And that is demonstrated by many of these beautiful verses, a verse which Krishna says, go out and declare this to everyone. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Okay, I didn't speak too long because I thought let me at least leave some time. Perhaps you may have some questions on this or some comments. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. That's a very beautiful explanation. My question is, we consider Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the most merciful incarnation, but in the pastime with Chota Haridas, we see very, very strong side of his. Doesn't so how do we reconcile that? And also, if a person is genuinely repentful, how do we?
Thank you so much. Yes, so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is meant to be very, very kind. But then we see in the pastime with Chota Haridas, then he is very, very strong. We say Mahaprabhu is the most merciful, but when Pratraparudra, who's such a great devotee, that he's conquered all the other Vaishnavas' hearts, still Mahaprabhu is saying, no, I won't meet him. I don't meet royalty. And so how do we see this strong side of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? The first thing is to understand that in both of those cases, and let's specifically talk about Chota Haridas because you raised that point. Actually, what was the result of Chota Haridas's rejection or rejection by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Ultimately, it said in his own transcendent body, he ultimately came back and was serving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, singing for him. And so actually we see that even Mahaprabhu in his sternness, in his strongness, in his holding to a very strong principle, even in that there is great mercy. So yes, externally Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may have been strong, but actually internally he was giving all benefit to Chota Haridas. The reason why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu externally is strong is because he wants to set a standard. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is ready to forgive anyone for their mistakes. However, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also wants to show a clear example to the world of what to do and what not to do. And in that way, the devotee doesn't have to go through that winding road of mistakes and recovery and mistakes and recovery. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while being very merciful, is also very, very concerned with setting a standard, because that's ultimately what will lead one to the spiritual reality in the quickest way. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu plays both roles of setting a high standard, but within that also being kind and always giving everyone a chance, even if they fall short. Is that okay? Yes.
In Kali Yuga, sometimes someone will come to the movement with a problem that's it can't be broken down so easily. They may have a emotional or physiological condition that causes them to repeatedly make the same mistake, even though they may be trying to stop it. So how do we see this in terms of the verse?
So sometimes one may be habituated psychologically or neurologically to doing the same thing again and again, making a mistake or having some level of weakness. Again, if we see that the other factors are there, that one is honest, that one is trying to get help, that one feels humbled by their own shortcoming, that one is taking shelter of Krishna, these other factors then show us the sincerity that is within that individual. See, Krishna is just looking for our sincerity. That bhav, that emotion to want to genuinely try to be the real thing. If Krishna sees that we're actually trying to be the real thing, a real devotee, then Krishna can work with us. If you have everything else, but that is missing, then it's very difficult. So it's interesting where the word sincerity comes from. If I remember correctly, in Italian countries, they used to have, they have marble. And there was a type of marble called sincere marble or something like that. Sincera. There you go. Scholar. And that type of marble, you see sometimes there is cracks in the marble. And what they do is they put a special type of wax which covers up the crack. But this sincera marble would not have that. It would you would be able to see all the cracks. That is, we have imperfect senses. Therefore, we will be subject to illusion. Therefore, we will make mistakes. Those three defects you can't really do much about. But the question is, once one makes a mistake, are they going to fall prey to the fourth defect, which is to them? If you do that, then it's the nail in the coffin. Therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, weakness is allowed, but cheating. Is that okay? Thank you. Yes.
Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. I was just curious, the way you started the class was, which is the words that Krishna told you kind of spread around with symbols, but what is the reference for that? I tried looking at a reference.
That's written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary. So what happens in the commentaries is that sometimes the acharyas, they are able to add extra dialogue between the lines. Like say, for example, another dialogue that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes is when Arjun comes to Krishna and says, Shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapannam. Krishna, I want you to be my guru. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, by his transcendental vision, he actually adds in and reveals to us extra dialogue whereby Krishna looks at Arjun and Krishna's like, you don't need me to be your guru, it's okay. And then Arjun says, no, I really want you to. So he adds in this extra. So what we understand is that the great devotees, you see, Rishi, what does Rishi mean? Rishi comes from the Sanskrit word drishya, which means to see. So rishis are literally seeing spiritually. So by their spiritual acumen, they are able to see, perceive, and reveal things to the world that perhaps are not even directly revealed by Vyasadeva. And so even we find, for example, authors like Jiva Goswami write books like Gopal Champu, where they give us so much extra detail of Krishna and his associates and the dialogues that they are having. Therefore, Krishna's pastimes are Nitya Leela. They're going on somewhere, they're always going on in the spiritual world, they're always going on somewhere in the material world, and they're continually being enacted within the hearts of the devotees. And therefore, the devotees can actually perceive all these things. So yes, in the commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this. Sarartha Varshini Tika. Thank you.
I have a question. So, I'm related to this topic. So, if everyone commits a mistake, these material desires a mistake to find a job, to lead a life. Is that a mistake? Because the overall arching goal is to actually get spiritual knowledge and get out of this Maya illusion and go back to God. So, is this material desires a mistake? Should I pray Krishna for giving me material desires, or I should not pray because I'm committing mistakes again?
Yes, Krishna says if one comes to me and prays for material things, actually is foolish. Saint Teresa of Avila, she said more tears were shed from prayers that were answered than prayers that were unanswered. Because we get the prayers which get us more into trouble. There was a man and woman, they were married for 40 years, so it was their 40th wedding anniversary, so the genie came, and the genie said to the husband, anything you want? He said, yes, I wish my wife was 30 years younger than me. Boom, he became 90. He said, no, there must be some mistake here. No, you want it? You want it? So we ask for things. We have no idea. We have no idea how we are becoming implicated more and more. Prabhupada tells the story of the lady who had that, isn't it? She was carrying that water pot, and then she slipped, and the water, in the blazing heat, she was carrying it, toiling like anything. So then it dropped, and Krishna appeared. Yes, what would you like? I dropped my water pot. Can you put it back on? Then she was walking again in the heat, sweating with that heavy water pot on her head, and she thought, Krishna came to me. Could have asked for anything. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj tells us the real prayer. Yadi dasyasi me kaman varamscha varadarshaba kamanam ridya sammoham bhavatastu vrine varam. When the Shingadev comes to him and says, any benediction, anything you like, make my wife 30 years younger than me. If you really want to give me a benediction, kamanam ridya samroham, then take away all the material desires that are in my heart. So it's a mistake. Of course, sometimes we may ask for some material thing with the genuine feeling that if I can sort this thing out, then it will give me more of an opportunity to serve Krishna. Anyway, only you know whether that's true or not. That's between you and Krishna. But simply more material things, bhogeshvarya prashaktanam daya padita chetasham vyavasayatmika buddhi. While our attention is still in these things, we can't fully give ourselves to that spiritual endeavor. So yes, try not to raise the fever of material life. Simple living, high thinking. Nowadays, it's simply living, hardly thinking.
Thank you. Maharaj, question I have is the society might look at mistakes differently. For example, a child does a mistake, it's not taken seriously, but the same mistake is done by adult. It's much more. but among adults also, the brahmachari or sannyasis do compared to grahasthas, it's taken looked at differently. So how does Krishna look at these mistakes?
Yes, every position of responsibility carries an expectation. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Sanyasira alpa chidra sarva loka gai. That a sannyasi or renunciate's life is like a white sheet. And if there's an alpa chidra, even one mark, sarva loka gai, then the whole world will talk about it. So in any position where one yields power, in any position where one yields influence, then with that comes great responsibility. And so, again, yes, that responsibility is there, and we shouldn't use this verse just to, again, think that it's okay if I make a mistake. But yes, anyone who's holding a greater position of power must be held accountable for that, because now they are not simply dealing with their own life, but they're dealing with many people's lives. And therefore, there needs to be a higher level of scrutiny and purity that is there. Therefore, it's all a razor's edge. Kshurasya dhara nishitam duratyaya. But ultimately, whatever position we hold, again, it comes back to the same thing. We go in front of Krishna, and Krishna sees the sincerity in our hearts. And so, again, it comes back to the same thing. Yes, different positions may hold different levels of accountability and responsibility, but ultimately behind all of that, every single living entity is a struggling jiva in the ocean of the material world, and mama maya duratyaya is very powerful. Therefore, the only thing we have at our disposal is our own sincerity. So yes, if one takes a position of responsibility, then they should be extra careful and be extra vigilant as to not have to take advantage of Krishna's kindness. All right, so I think time is going on. So thank you so much. Please forgive me if I made any mistakes. Just sharing with you a very hope-giving verse from Krishna. Please read the purport by Srila Prabhupada when you get some time. And thank you very much. Looking forward to being with all of you again very soon. Srila Prabhupada, please. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh, yes, they come.
So, a wonderful, short, sweet, very much to the point message, lesson, and very, very masterfully presented by Vishnu Maharaj. So we're very grateful.